Some viewers may find the following video disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised.
Welcome everyone. This is The Dating Game Killer Part 6. Today is the story of Rodney Alcala. When we last left off, we had talked about how Rodney Alcala went to trial for the murder of Robin Samshu in 1979, and they would find him guilty and sentence him to death. They, however, would reappeal the case because the juror had been misinformed of all of Alcala's history with sexual assault, mainly the ones they knew about, which would be Tali Shapiro and Monique Hoyt. They would bring him in, and it would be the same thing as before. They would find him guilty and sentence him to death. And they would reappeal the case in 1992, which this trial would not get started until 2003. As Alcala was preparing and getting ready for his trial, the police were actually going and getting ready for the trial as well. If you remember, we had talked about how Alcala had a storage shed in Seattle, and the police had went into this storage shed and found a lot of pictures. And not only had they found over 1,000 photos of different women in different poses, etc., but they would also find a large bag containing a lot of earrings. The trial would commence in 2003, and at this point in time, the police had brought in some updates that they did not know about in 1979. They would first go and tell the judge about Jill Barcombe. They would say that she was an 18-year-old girl from New York that would run away, that actually would be found in California, and she had been rolled up like a ball. They would again and later say that they would do DNA testing found at the crime scene, and Alcala's DNA matched the DNA and semen found inside of her. They would then show the picture of 27-year-old Georgia Wicks, and the police would say, we had found her who had been bludgeoned to death in her Malibu apartment. And again, the DNA that they had taken off of Miss Wicks and the semen found inside of her actually again matched Rodney Alcala. They would then show the portrait of 31-year-old Charlotte Lamb, and again, they would tell the judge, this is Charlotte Lamb, who is 31. She was found in the laundry room of her apartment where she had been raped, bludgeoned, and her genitals mutilated. And again, they had found DNA at the scene of the crime that matched Rodney Alcala. The police would then show the portrait of Gerald Parenzo, who would inevitably be found mutilated and strangled to death and raped at her apartment when her job had realized she went to a baseball game and did not return. There, the police would find signs of forced entry and signs that she had been raped, mutilated, and beaten. They would also find not only DNA samples on the victim, but they would find the assailant's blood in the window where he tried to escape. And again, the DNA matched Rodney Alcala. Not only did the DNA match at all these places to Alcala, but the large selection of photos that Alcala had in Seattle, they would find pictures of each one of these women. Not only would they find each one of these women, they would actually find the missing earrings belonging to Jill Barcombe, Charlotte Lamb, and Jill Parenzo. They would even find Robin Samshu's earrings in this Seattle storage unit, as well as others. But Alcala would say that those were actually his earrings and wore it on the episode of The Dating Game, which they would bring in an actor who was one of the contestants on the show. And he would testify and say, I don't remember seeing Alcala wearing any earrings because at that point in time, men were not wearing earrings, and he would have noticed it. So that was disputed. Alcala would still try to maintain his innocence on Robin, but would not dispute the fact that his DNA was matched to 4 other women that he had murdered. To which the prosecution would go to the judge and tell the courts, you may, the juror, have reasonable doubt, but you cannot have reasonable doubt when 4 of the 5 victims are not proven by eyewitness, but by DNA. Ultimately, they would find Alcala guilty and sentence him to death. Around 2010, investigators really wanted to kind of close the gaps on all of the people that were photographed in Alcala's storage shed. Like I said, there was over 1,000 photos, and they would take 120 of these photos and put them in Have You Seen Me, etc. 900 of those photos could not be put onto this lost and found site because of the fact that they were too sexually explicit in nature. One of the photos found at the Seattle storage unit was this photo here, who is actually Christine Thornton, who not only was a motorist, but she was also pregnant at the time that this photograph was taken. Her body would actually be found on Sweetwater County, Wyoming, right along Interstate 80. When they got the photograph, they would actually go to the prison cell where Alcala was at, and they would hold the photograph in front of him and ask him if he can remember the photo. At the time, Alcala was very near 76 or 77. His health was declining, and he wasn't even able to get up and get around as much as he used to. And he would pick up the photograph, and they said that his eyes would start twinkling, and he would start taking his finger and drawing the outline of the girl, and would have like this very sinister, sadistic smile on his face. To which the investigator would, smack him back in reality and basically tell him, Alcala, do you recognize the girl in the photo? To which he would kind of shake his head and go, yeah, I was there when I took the photo, but he would not admit to killing the girl. And among those photos, there were also some other photos that the bodies had been found, and their crimes had gone unsolved for many, many years. There they would find the photographs of Cornelia Crilly, who was killed in New York, where Alcala had murdered her very shortly after the Tally Shapiro assault. Not only would they find earrings connecting to Ellen Hoover, but they would also find photographs in that list of photographs of women being photographed. And DNA would actually confirm that he had actually killed Hoover as well. They would actually go and try to extradite him back to New York so he could actually be tried for these crimes. And ironically, instead of pleading not guilty as he had done so many times before, he had actually pleaded guilty to these crimes, to which the judge would then sentence him to 25 years to life, to the additional death penalty that he was sentenced to. Alcala would eventually pass away in 2020 with unspecified reasons. No one really knows on what he died of. It was just a fluke. He actually wouldn't even be put to death, to a lot of people's dismay. Robin Shamshu's mother would actually pass away before seeing Alcala die. Her family would say that it's just a sad injustice that she got to live her whole life waiting to watch the man that murdered her daughter pass away. As I mentioned before, the police had released a lot of those photographs for people to come forward and see if anyone recognized the people. Following his death, Morgan Rowan would actually come forward and say that Alcala had actually assaulted her when she was 16 in 1968. He would actually try to take her into his apartment room to where he would try to grape her, but her friends and family would actually break into the room and chase him off. Since the release of the photos, over 20 people have come forward, either claiming to have been attacked by Alcala or that someone in the list actually looks familiar. The police are still looking for help so they can identify the 120 women that were on the photos.